Here's a guy who thinks you still have free will if God infallibly knows everything you will ever do.
So here's the dilemma. If God already knows what you're going to do tomorrow, do you actually have a choice?
If you have the option to do something other than what God believes you will do, thus proving his belief to be wrong, then yes, otherwise no.
Now, this conversation starts off casual, but it quickly turns into a full-on philosophical firefight over free will. And the deeper we go, the weirder it gets. Because if God's knowledge can't be wrong, does that mean your choices are fixed before you make them? Or is it just another case of confusing knowledge with causation?
It's neither. When I say that if God knows what we will do in the future and he knows it infallibly, then we are not free to do other than what he knows we will do, I am not saying that God knowing what we will do causes us to do what we will do. It could rather be the case that we are predetermined to do a thing and God simply knows about the predetermination.
We debated, we disagreed, I even got called handsome somewhere in the middle. But the real question is this: can you actually be free if the future is already known?
Certainly not if it's known infallibly. The question is simple. Are you free to act contrary to what God knows you will do, thus proving that knowledge to be wrong? If he really knows it infallibly, then by definition you are not. To say that God is infallible is not just to say that he always will be right, it's saying that it is impossible for him to be wrong.
Let's get into it. Hello, how are you? And just real quick, How old are you?
I'm 21. Do you remember us talking, I think it was last Friday?
I do not.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just want to start off. How are you doing? How's your day going?
I'm good, bro. Don't take it personal. I talk to a lot of people. I also don't see your face, right?
No, that's fair. So one of my chief concerns, is, well, are you willing to talk about the meta question of like what it means to be convinced?
Yeah.
Okay. How do I know that you'd be able to push back against your audience if you were ever convinced that Christianity is not true, as you say?
How do you know that I'd push back on my audience if I was convinced? You don't.
Well, he would know if you actually did push back.
Okay, so that is my concern, right? You brand yourself to be a former atheist turned Christian, right? You brand yourself to want to spread the word of God. You want to spread the gospel. You want to be a Christian entertainer. And my thing is, okay, well, if you have... Exactly, yeah. And I'm saying if you're providing entertainment for all these people, and I don't know how much money you make, that could be an incentive, but I'm saying if you're building all these incentive structures for yourself... I'm sorry?
Of course money's an incentive.
Yeah, okay, so then I'm asking, if you built all these incentive structures that like incentivizes you to keep this position, no matter if you're convinced or not, how do I know that if you've ever been convinced, you would like... It'd probably be content creator like self-unaliving, right?
I suppose you can't really know that he's not just grifting now. Maybe what he's been doing has been a for-profit shtick all along. I don't suspect that myself, but I can't rule it out because there are definitely people who do that.
I know. I think I can continue. I think I could still listen. You don't know.
Well,
that's the end of the day. But I could just change my stance. Like I could just. People do it all the time. Young Don has changed his stance like 17,000 times, and he still makes content. He still has a good channel, and people still watch him. Young Don went from a
specific brand for yourself.
Yeah, and Young Don did the same thing. He built a specific brand under like the Christian look, so he did like an atheistic look. Then he went Christian. Then he went Hebrew Israelite, I think, for a little bit. Then he went to Torah only. Then he went back to Christian. Now he's back to atheist again.
Well, Young Don has a React channel. React channels don't just draw an audience to hear a particular viewpoint. They draw an audience of folks who are curious about the subject matter to which they are reacting. He could have a different opinion in every video, and he'll still get clicks if people are interested in the subject on which he is commenting.
And people still watch his content. I mean, like, listen, I have this certain brand. I switched to atheism. I build a new audience. I'm just still entertaining and handsome.
That's true. That's true. You are really handsome. I appreciate the beard.
Thank you.
Well, Big John's channel is still small enough that he wouldn't be losing out on that much money if he were to switch right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that was one of my concerns. I guess you're right. I can't really know if that's how you brand. But okay. The other thing is, I wanted to talk about theological fatalism. Right.
Sure.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. Tell me what it is.
Okay. Let's see if I can get my notes. Theological fatalism is the view that if God infallibly knows what you will do, then you must do it. Therefore, your actions are not free in any meaningful sense.
Yeah, I know this. There's a certain problem with their knowledge is not causation.
Knowledge doesn't have to be causation in order for free will to be impossible if infallible knowledge of the future exists. God knowing infallibly what you will do in the future doesn't mean that his knowledge causes you to do what you will do in the future, but it does mean that you can't do otherwise. In order for God to infallibly know what you will do in the future, your future has to be predetermined. Pointing that out is not the same as claiming that the knowledge itself is what predetermines the behavior. It could be the case that something else is predetermining the behavior and God just knows what it's predetermined to be. Maybe the predetermination causes the knowledge rather than the other way around. Whichever is the case, if God infallibly knows what we will do in the future, then by definition, we are not free to do otherwise. If God's knowledge of what we will do in the future is infallible, then by definition, it is impossible for me to do anything contrary to what he knows I will do. To say that it is possible is to say that it's possible for God to have incorrect beliefs.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, but he's also completely certain, right?
Yeah, so knowledge is not causation.
Yeah, okay, we're talking past each other. Hold on. Knowledge is not causation, right? But he's also completely certain. So I'm saying if God knows what you're going to do, your fate is sealed, and you must do that at some point.
Right. He's not saying that the fate is sealed by the knowledge necessarily, but the fate has to be sealed in order for the infallible knowledge to exist.
I'm not saying God is causing you to do it. I'm saying you will do it, whether or not you want to.
Yeah, that's saying knowledge is causation. You're saying because God knows I will.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Saying that God has knowledge of a predetermined event is not the same as saying that his knowledge is what predetermines the event. In order for infallible knowledge of a future event to exist, that future event has to be predetermined by something.
Okay, then what are you saying?
What I'm saying is, if God is certain, right, he knows, he's omniscient, right? He knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I'm trying not to be like I'm not trying to have like my mind destroyed. Okay.
You're basically
still
just
very new at this.
You're bringing up the $1 million, the paradox, and the $1 million and the two suitcases paradox, and the trolley experiment paradox. These two paradoxes that you kind of like make you wonder of certain things, right? But at the end of the day, it still doesn't change that knowledge isn't causation. You don't cause things to happen by knowing.
This is starting to sound like this dude is being a bit obtuse. Even if God's foreknowledge doesn't cause us to do what he infallibly knows we will do, it remains the case that if he infallibly knows what we will do in the future, then by definition there is no possible scenario in which his foreknowledge turns out to be wrong. That's what infallible means. If God infallibly knows what I will do in the future, then it is impossible for me to do anything contrary to what he infallibly knows I will do. This is true even if the foreknowledge is not what causes me to act the way God foresees.
Yeah, I agree that knowledge isn't causation, but that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, then I'm very curious of what you're saying then.
Okay, if God has a knowledge that you will wake up tomorrow, how is that? Do you have the ability to do otherwise?
Yes, I have the ability to do otherwise.
Not if God infallibly knows that you won't. If God believes that you will wake up tomorrow and he's infallible, then it's impossible for that belief to turn out to be wrong.
So God isn't certain then?
No, he is certain.
So then you will wake up tomorrow?
Yes, I will wake up tomorrow.
If God believes that you will wake up tomorrow, then to say that it is possible to not wake up tomorrow is to say that it is possible that God is mistaken in his belief that you will wake up tomorrow. If it is possible for God to be mistaken, then by definition, he's not infallible.
Guys, help me out. What do I say?
Right, so because I will
knows.
hold on, because I will do something does not mean I do not have the ability to do another thing.
To say that God infallibly knows that you will do something does in fact mean that it is not possible for anything contrary to that to happen. To say that it is possible to do other than what God believes you will do is to say that it is possible for God to turn out to be mistaken in that belief.
I'm saying God knows that you will wake up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And if he knows it infallibly, then it's impossible for that knowledge to turn out to be wrong, which means the same thing as saying that it is impossible for you to do otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still logically...
He's certain. He knows you're going to wake up tomorrow.
Right? So it's still logically possible that I could not.
If God believes that you'll wake up tomorrow, then to say that it's logically possible for you to not wake up tomorrow is to say that it's logically possible for God's belief to be mistaken, which would mean the same as saying that God is fallible.
So I have the potential.
No.
The potential. So I have the passive potential that I will not wake up.
What is passive potential? What does that have to do with what I'm talking about?
Passive potential, the extrinsic potential that isn't to my intrinsic nature. So I have the passive potential that I will not wake up. It exists within.
Having such potential would mean the exact same thing as God's foreknowledge having the potential to be wrong, which, if he is infallible, cannot be the case.
Or externally, sorry.
Okay, I'm not sure what passive potential has to do with what I'm saying. If God knows everything, your fate Your fate is already determined by what God knows, right? He's completely
No.
certain.
Because
No?
I wouldn't word it that way. Your fate isn't necessarily determined by what God knows, but it would either have to be determined by what God knows, or it would have to determine what God knows in order for God to know it infallibly.
You're arguing for like a deterministic point of view.
No, I'm arguing for fatalism. But those are two separate things. Okay.
That God exists within inside of time, and he's simply a fortune teller. That's not the case. God exists outside of time and has observed all things.
If there can be a frame of reference from which future events can be seen like past events can, then we have no more power to change future events than we have to change past events.
You're saying God exists outside of time?
And has observed all things. This is why he knows.
To say that something exists outside of time is to say that it never exists.
Okay. Pull up more notes. Sorry.
Right? So a good analogy that's used all the time is that if I travel into the future and I watch you eat a sandwich, I travel into the past and I know in the future you're going to eat a sandwich. It doesn't mean you're caused or required to eat a sandwich. I just have knowledge.
That knowledge doesn't cause the sandwich eating, but if it is infallible knowledge, then by definition, it's not possible for that sandwich to not be eaten.
Okay, but we still know God's knowledge is infallible, complete, and fixed, right?
Fixed? What do you mean by fixed?
That would, if it's not fixed, then that would imply God is not certain.
Well, I'm just asking you what you mean by fixed. I'm not saying it's not. I'm asking a clarifying question. We're doing semantics.
I thought we were arguing theological fatalism. Fixed is unchangeable truth about the future.
Unchangeable. No, I wouldn't say it's unchangeable truth of the future. So, for example, there's a good there is in the scripture. Who was it? David was going to be attacked by Saul, and he was at the temple. And so, if David would have stayed at the temple, Saul would have unalived him. God gave him that prophecy. Says, if you stay at the temple, Saul will unalive you. So what did David do? He left the temple, and Saul didn't unalive him. So there's this thing called middle knowledge as well.
If God is omniscient, then he wouldn't just know what would happen in hypothetical scenarios, but also which scenarios would actually play out. God would have known that David would not stay at the temple.
Okay, middle knowledge, is this the idea that God knows not just everything that is, but everything that could be, right?
Yeah, this is your potentiality. This is that passive potential I was talking about. God is aware of the passive potentiality.
But if he knows infallibly which of those potentials will turn out to be actual, then it is impossible for those potentials to not turn out to be actual. Because if they didn't, God's foreknowledge would turn out to be incorrect, which is not possible if he's infallible.
Okay, so... Sorry, I gotta lock in. Okay. If counterfactuals are true before you created, then he'd say no in them, right? If God knows what you'll freely choose before you exist, that means your free choice is already fixed. You can't alter it because then God would be wrong. So they aren't really free choices. They're fated behaviors labeled as freedom.
Yeah, that's implying that knowledge is causation.
Not necessarily. It could be the case that the future is fixed and God's knowledge is caused by the future being fixed rather than God's knowledge causing the future to be fixed. Either way, to say that God infallibly knows what you will do in the future is to say that if God believes you will eat a sandwich tomorrow, it is not possible for you to behave in a way that proves that belief to be wrong. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.